Okay, so what we're looking at today is how a bill becomes a law. So a bill is just a proposed law. So people in Congress propose laws all the time, introduce bills all the time. Very few of them actually become law. And so what we're looking at is the process of how that happens. And there's a chart in your book on page 296 that lays all of this out that I'm about to go over, so you can see it. But this is the process for how it happens. And remember that for a bill to become a law, it's got to pass through both houses of Congress in identical form. They both have to approve it with a majority vote, 50% plus one. And then as we'll get into later, it goes on to the president. But before that, Congress has, the House and the Senate have to pass both bills. A bill can start in either the House or the Senate. It can start in both at the same time, with the exception of a tax bill, which has to start in the House, not the Senate. Okay, so a bill is a proposed law. And so what will happen is one of the members of Congress will write up a bill, write up a proposal, and formally introduce it in Congress. So what we're going to look at is what happens next, and we're going to look at specifically to start with what happens in the House. And so first, the bill is assigned to a committee. And a committee is a small group of House or Senate members. So we're talking about the House right now, there's 435 people. So you might have a committee of maybe 40 of them. So, and if you go to house.gov/committees, you'll see a list of all the committees in the House. But let's say you've got a bill about tobacco farming. So it's going to go first to, they're just going to look at it, see what it's about, and it goes to the House Agriculture Committee. And that's going to be about 40 members of the House. And because the Democrats have the majority in the House of the 435 people, they're also going to have a majority on that committee. So it's going to go to the Agriculture Committee if it's a tobacco farming bill. It's going to go to whatever specialized committee deals with that issue. And then they're going to look at it. And the Agriculture Committee is going to have 4 or 5 different subcommittees, which is going to be an even smaller group of House members. Maybe let's say, just guess and say 15, and let's say that there's a tobacco subcommittee. So that bill is going to end up at the tobacco subcommittee of those 15 people. And the people on the tobacco subcommittee are going to be people who come from areas where there's a lot of tobacco farming, or who for some reason know a lot about it. But again, like this committee, the tobacco subcommittee in the House is going to have a majority of Democrats because there's a majority of Democrats in the House. So the bill gets sort of shoved along, it gets to the subcommittee. The most common thing to happen for a bill is for the subcommittee to look at it, ignore it, not do anything, and that's what happens to about 90% of the bills it receives, and if that's true, then it's over, it's dead, it's never going to become law. So that's usually what happens. It gets sort of pushed along and then ignored, and then it's over. Sometimes, if they're interested, they will have hearings on the bill. And so if they think it might be something they're interested in, they'll have people who know a lot about the bill come in and say, hey, here's why this would be a good idea. Maybe some tobacco farmers, maybe some people from the tobacco industry, maybe some people from an anti-smoking group. Whoever it is, they're going to come in and say, hey, here's why this is a good bill, here's why it's a bad bill, here's what you should change. So they're going to have hearings with witnesses. And And then after that, they will have what's called a markup session where the bill is edited up. Maybe you add something in, you take something out, you change the wording or whatever. The bill's edited, you know, it's changed. And then subcommittee votes. And if the committee votes no, the bill's dead, it's not going to become a law. If yes, and the subcommittee approves of it, then it's going to go back to the Agriculture Committee, which we said before is probably going to be maybe 40 people in the House, and it's going to have a majority of Democrats. And they can either ignore it, which means it's dead, or have hearings and a markup session, and then they vote. And if they vote no, it's basically over. And if they vote yes, then it's going to keep moving. If the subcommittee votes yes and then the committee votes yes, then it's going to go to a different committee called the Rules Committee. And if the Rules Committee ignores it and decides they don't like it, then it's dead. If not, what they do is this. They put so what they do, if they put rules on it, they will schedule a date and a time where the whole House of Representatives is going to get together and debate on the bill and then vote on it. So, okay, we've got this bill on April 20th, we're going to debate on it and then take a vote. And they'll decide how long the debate on the bill is going to last before they vote, so maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, something like that. And sometimes they will put what's called an open rule on the bill, meaning once they start debating, people in the House can offer up a change or an amendment of some sort, and they'll vote on it. If they have a closed rule, what that means is there's no amendments or changes allowed. They'll debate it as is and then vote on it the way it is, and then that's it. So the Rules Committee either ignores it and kills it, or they put all these rules, they schedule a day and a time for debate. And if that happens, then if the House votes no on it, basically it's dead, it's over. But if they vote yes on it, it's still got to get through the Senate. So that means it gets through the House, but not through the Senate. So you can see there's 4 places where a bill can die before it even gets out of the House of Representatives. At the subcommittee, they can kill it off. The committee can kill it off. The Rules Committee can kill it off. And then it can be voted no by the whole House of Representatives. So it's very, very difficult to get a bill passed in Congress because there's so many different hoops that you have to jump through, hurdles that you have to get over. Just to get it out of the House. And that's only to get it out of the House. And the framers probably would have wanted it that way. The framers wanted the government to act slowly, deliberately, so they didn't make mistakes, so that all different people got to have a say on things before something was done. So the framers would have been okay with that. In the Senate, basically a bill's gonna have to go through the same process. And if you want to see what committees are in the Senate, you can go to senate.gov/committees. It'll have a whole list of them. Basically the same process with a few differences. The bill's going to be sent to a subcommittee, sent to a committee, but a few differences in the process between the Senate and the House. First of all, there's not a rules committee in the Senate that puts rules on debate. So that's one less step that you have to go through. Once a bill is passed through subcommittee and committee, the party leaders, the top Republican, who's called the majority leader, the top Democrat, who's called the minority leader, they get together and they pick a date, say April 22nd, so they were going to debate. In the Senate, there is no time limit on debate. The House has a preset limit. Debate's going to last an hour or 2 hours. In the Senate, there is never a preset limit on debate. You just start debating until everybody is finished. In the Senate, you can always amend a bill. If the Senate is debating it on the floor, the 100 senators, they can all offer amendments and vote on the amendments and changes. You can only do that in the House if there's an open rule, but in the Senate, you can always do that. So three differences in the Senate, and one that's sort of related to this is called filibuster. Which is nonstop debating to prevent a vote. If you know that you're going to lose a vote on a bill and you don't want that bill to pass, there's no preset time limit on debate. Debate lasts until everybody's done, so you can just keep talking and talking and talking. And the longest ever by one person was 24 hours. One guy named Strom Thurmond in the 50s literally spoke for 24 hours before he finally gave out. So that's called a filibuster. If you know you're going to lose, you can just kind of drag things out forever. And the only way to stop a filibuster is called a cloture vote. And a cloture vote is a vote to stop debate and vote on the bill. So that would be, okay, Thurman's been talking 20 hours, we're tired of it, let's vote to just cut off debate and go ahead and vote on the bill, yes or no. And the thing with a cloture vote is it takes 60 votes to pass. So right now, the Republicans have 53 votes in the Senate, the Democrats only have 47. And that means the Republicans are going to have the majority of every Senate committee. But it also means that if all the Republicans stick together and vote yes on a bill, then they're going to get whatever they want. On the other hand, if the Democrats filibuster a bill, the Republicans don't have 60 votes to stop the filibuster. So it's a way for a party with a minority of seats in in the Senate to prevent a bill from coming up to a vote and prevent it from passing. So that's what a filibuster and a cloture is. So 4 places a bill can die in the House: subcommittee, committee, rules committee, on the floor of the House. 3 places it can die in the Senate, the subcommittee, the committee, and then the whole Senate. So you got 7 different places that a bill can die. Let's say that a bill makes it through all of that, comes out of the House and comes out of the Senate, and let's say, for example, that a bill is similar but different. Let's say the House cuts taxes by 50%, but the Senate passes a bill cutting taxes by 5%. You can't send that to the president because he doesn't know what to sign. It's got to be identical coming out of the House and the Senate. So then, if that's true, what they do is they go to a conference committee. And unlike these other committees we've been talking about, where it's all House or all Senate, this will have members of both the House and the Senate in it, and their job is to work out a compromise. And so let's say they work out a compromise of cut taxes 9%. And they approve that, then the House votes on the compromise bill. The Senate votes on the compromise bill. It doesn't go back through the whole process through committee, they just vote on whatever the conference committee agreed upon. And let's say that they both vote yes, then it goes to the president. Finally, after all these steps, the president gets the bill, he can sign it, which makes it a law. Or he can veto, which is rejected. So after all this work on the part of Congress, the president can look at it and say, no, I'm going to veto that, rejected. Usually they'll know ahead of time that the president's going to do that, so they're not going to send him a bill he's going to veto, because what's the point? But he can veto it, and that means no law unless